Radio. I've done some posts on the apps available, but let's talk in more general terms about using radio as a source of input for your language learning. Why listen to radio? Why is listening to talking on the radio a good thing? Wouldn't it be better just to watch something in the language? I mean, you can't get subtitles on radio. No, you can't. And that's kind of the point. Watching content is good, don't get me wrong, but if you want to listen to people talking about current events and life in the country, you're more likely to find that on the radio, which is generally not geo-restricted, whereas TV is. And yes, there are VPNs, but they won't necessarily work. Companies are getting savvy to these things and blocking them. But back to radio. As well as watching, you do need to just listen. It's a very different skill to be able to understand what is being said without seeing the person talking or subtitles. And it is something that you need to practice because you won't always be able to see a person's face. And even if you're right next to a person speaking the language, you won't necessarily be staring directly at their face. That would be kind of creepy if you did it for a long time. What type of radio? There are two basic types, largely music and largely speaking. Okay, I suppose there are three, because a good portion are a mix of the two, conversation interspersed with music. Music is great for learning languages, but I don't think that's the most effective way of using radio for input. Music is better listened to on a dedicated app with focus if you're using it for learning. For me, the best way to use radio for input is to listen to people speaking in the language. There are a ton of apps out there giving you aggregated access to radio stations in another country, but you'll probably find that a lot of the stations are music only. The easiest way to find speaking on the radio, at least to start with, is to use the state-funded radio station apps. I'm not sure if all countries have these, but it's certainly a common thing in Europe. Obviously, though, if you're learning the language of a country where state radio might be full of very obvious state propaganda, you might want to go another route, if there is one available. These apps not only have the live radio feeds, they also tend to have a lot of other content, such as podcasts, which you can listen to at your leisure, but you may have to sign up to do that. Radio itself, live radio, is usually free to listen to. What to listen to and how on the radio? Okay, we've decided on our radio station or stations. What do we do next? When I first started learning Italian after having not used languages for a very long time, back at a time when you only caught a foreign radio station by mistake on the radio and it was so crackly and distant you could barely understand it, I downloaded an app within a month and started listening. There was no specific thought to this other than I'd been consuming a fair amount of content on YouTube about comprehensible input, a totally new concept for me at the time. I just thought listening to the radio might be a good idea as it would be input, even if it wasn't comprehensible. And yes, at the time it was just noise. I could barely recognise more than the odd il or la, but I persevered. I listened to the radio every night. I actually fell asleep listening to it and woke up to it. No, I wasn't trying to learn whilst I slept. That's largely nonsense. The only thing that might help is that if you heard something in the language just before you fell asleep, as it was fresh, it might get indexed in your brain more favourably. But this became a habit and, yes, I still do it. I listen to Italian radio every night. That's coming up to 5 years now, and no, I'm not suggesting you do exactly this. It's just an illustration. For you, a normal person, I would recommend setting a specific time each day when you turn the radio on, and that sometimes you use headphones of some sort so that you can hear more of the detail of what's being said, but not all the time. What will you learn? If you listen to the language that much, however little you understand when you start, you will gradually get your ear in and start to understand more and more. You will begin to understand the intonation or the music of the language. You will hear the correct pronunciation of words. You don't even have to be actively listening to do this. It can be background noise. That doesn't matter. Make it something normal to hear in the background. You will start to understand single words, then phrases, and on until you understand a good portion of what's being said. And when you do understand something, it's a great feeling. No, I still don't understand everything because a lot of radio isn't measured speaking. It's natural. The first thing I started to understand was bits of the news reports, which were every half hour earlier on and every hour overnight. News reports, by their very nature, repeat pieces of news each time until they become old news. The report might change slightly or have a different reporter or presenter, but that repetition is what helps with understanding. Add to that the fact that you might have heard some of the news in your own language and your comprehension will be boosted. It also allows you to understand more about the country because there will be local news. That might be politics or crime. Yes, honestly, those are by far the biggest two topics you hear on the news these days. Oh, and football scores. No, I'm not calling it soccer. And if you listen to the same type of programs each day, you will gradually begin to learn the vocabulary for that topic. Let's say you do listen to a program about politics. You'll get to know all the terms and the names of some of the politicians too. Funny little aside, I kept on hearing what I thought was the name of someone but couldn't work it out because the sound of it was all wrong for Italian. I puzzled over this for weeks before I tried to look it up, with all sorts of weird spellings, till I found it. Turns out this politician is Italian, but has a name that is spelled more like German than Italian. Another thing you'll start to pick up is the little phrases or sayings that are actually used by people, things that you might not have learned through your normal learning process. I've done posts about these before, but just to give you a few examples, here are some things they say on the news in Italian. They use cronaca as a word for news. Our equivalent chronicle is at best pretty old-fashioned and is more often seen when talking about fantasy novels. Per la cronaca is for the record. Cronaca nera is crime news. They also use polemica a lot. Yes, we have polemic in English, but I never hear it on the news when they're talking about disagreements over things. They use it all the time on the Italian news. Different voices. One of the best things about listening to radio is that you hear so many different voices. Not all of it is easy to hear, especially if people are calling in, but you'll hear every accent in a wide variety of speeds. The news presenter, for example, usually speaks more slowly, but the reporters in the field tend to speak faster. A presenter might start off slow, but if they're passionate about what they're saying, they might start speeding up. A hesitant caller might speak really fast because they're nervous, or really slow because they're not used to being on air. You never know what you're going to get. Give it a go. So do give listening to radio a go. Don't expect immediate results. Try listening without having any expectations of understanding what you're listening to, and before you know it, you'll be boosting your understanding of the language with very little effort.